Welcome to The Therapy Spot, the podcast where real conversations meet real impact. Hosted by Scott and Shazara Melody, two therapists bringing heartfelt, relatable, and therapeutic discussions that touch our lives and uplift our community. We're proud to be sponsored by an incredible network of organizations that share our mission to empower and inspire. Mr. Sophisticated, a business entrepreneur. Raymond from Fifth Avenue, the host of The Breakfast Blues Show. Carson Gracie Warriors, a renowned MMA school in Brent. And VIP, Violence Intervention Project, transforming lives and building safer communities in Hammersmith. Together with our sponsors, we're creating a space where every conversation sparks change, every voice is heard, and every episode inspires growth. Lock in as we feel, heal, and grow together. The Therapy Spot, healing our community one episode at a time.
Good evening and welcome to The Therapy Spot. We are back. We have an exciting episode today. For those that haven't tuned in before, my name is Scott. Everyone calls me Scotty and I'm a therapist, and The Therapy Spot is a space where we have therapeutically themed conversations and we bring different people in to get different perspectives. So on my right hand side, I have a wonderful friend of mine. I met her in 2022, I believe. And her name is Keeley. And Keeley, just tell people about your wealth of knowledge, what you specialize in, and your background, just a little bit, so we can get a little bit of flavor of who you are.
I help people pleasers who are in high conflict relationships with narcissistic individuals, people who struggle to say no, who go above and beyond for people and end up being used and abused and confused about their relationships and why they stay and why they can't break free. I help people to stop researching narcissism and start healing.
Okay. So you are a therapist by nature. How long have you trained and studied? And you've got your own practice now as well?
Absolutely. So I qualified in 2012. I used to work in prison, so I did 8 years at the Scrubs. Big up A wing, B wing.
Big up the A wing and the B wing.
You don't know.
Okay.
So I did 8 years behind the door, decided I didn't want to be a psychologist. It really wasn't in keeping with what spoke to me about human suffering. Did the master's in person-centered psychotherapy. And then at the end decided I'd have to work for myself because in the system, they don't want a master's qualification. They'd rather you had cognitive behavioral therapy. So I kind of didn't really have much of a choice. It felt like I didn't have a choice. And I went into private practice. And being that I had man problems, you know what I'm saying?
Tell it.
You know what I'm saying?
There's a song.
I thought I could turn a bad man good.
Okay.
You see me? So I decided that if I have that problem, I can't be alone. And many sistrins must be having the same issue.
Okay.
So I thought I'll specialize in what I know.
Okay. So I like the intro. I like how you blend the two styles of where you're from and keeping it 100% real. And I think that's something that drew me to you as a therapist, that you're highly educated, you know your specialism, but you're also down to earth. Absolutely. You haven't forgotten where you come from. So thank you for that.
Well, code switching is essential. My mum is a lorry driver. My father is an engineer. So it's something I've done my entire life.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Shaz.
Thank you. And I've got one of my good friends, Mr. Cozy. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself. But I met Mr. Cozy at one of his events. So he runs one of the only live film-based conversation nights in the UK. And it's an amazing event where you go, you watch little snippets of a movie and we have discussions on it. So it could be around relationships, parenting, identity, generational trauma, anything. You never really know what you're going to get until you get there. But it is such an amazing night out. So I'm really honoured to have him on the couch with us to share in his expertise and what he's discovered are some of the relationship issues that our community is having and from your point of view in your space. So yeah, tell us a bit more about yourself, even though I said it all.
Yeah, you said it all, to be honest. But so I run live shows which use the films that we love to inspire the conversations that we need. So we'll take clips from a popular black film. So the last event we did, Poetic Justice, took clips from that and then got into conversation about identity, trauma, and using the film as a platform and as a starting point to have conversations about our own context and our own experiences and the struggles that we all go through. And ultimately, it's trying to change the world one conversation at a time. But I think the idea is creating a safe space where we can hopefully start the conversation that will lead to our healing and to hopefully us coming together as a community. But yeah, we are 3 years in June, which I'm excited
Well
about.
done.
So we're our 3-year anniversary in June. And it's been a fun ride.
Oh,
Brilliant.
amazing.
Please invite me to the next event. Because I'd love to come and see that. That sounds so exciting. So
good.
you choose a movie, take snippets, and then the audience, like, you generate discussion and you find themes, and it generates like thinking and curiosity in people around themselves.
For sure.
Brilliant. I love that. I can't wait to come and see that. I can't wait.
Absolutely.
I'm stamping my feet already.
Absolutely. Even when I was just thinking about the themes, there was a theme on domestic violence and even communication towards men and women, and just things that you watch movies and like Poetic Justice, you see things happening. And like, remember the last conversation was, did the woman provoke him because then he crashed out and hit her, and who was in the wrong hair because she pushed his buttons, but then he hit her, and seeing the discussions in the audience and the different points of views and stuff was really like, okay, this is something that we really need to sort of process and think through. Yeah, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. So in today's topic,
We're smiling.
we are going to be talking and diving into love relationships and in our community especially, and unpacking it from all points of view. So I know the three of us here are therapists, but probably in different points. But one question I want to kickstart everything with is, what do we think are the biggest issues we are facing as a community when it comes to love and relationships? And we can kind of answer one at a time with whoever wants to go first.
No, I'm going to let my guest go first.
Good idea.
From your
the biggest
professional
issue?
experience and your client work, what's some of the things that are presented to you? What's some of these strings coming to your table with?
Let us know.
I think there's a tiredness about leveraging men, feeling that many of the women I have worked with feel like they have gone above and beyond, and not had that reciprocity. And when burnouts come along and their capacity to sustain, or with a lot of women, with what I deal with, a lot of women start Googling around. So it takes time before they get to therapy. They start questioning behavior. They start to look at their health, their depression, why they may have gone to the doctors to get their blood checked, and realizing, oh, actually, it's my relationship is a drain on me.
Okay.
I've been looking at all these other causes, and there's an epiphany. Now, obviously, I specialize in a particular type of toxic relationship, but I think it often starts with the Googling and becoming more curious. And because that has, blown up exponentially, usually what happens is people are coming to me already kind of primed with knowledge, but baffled about, what to do. And often, if I deal with a lot of empowered women who are successful and taking control of their careers. And sometimes, for example, with black couples, it can be, if the male isn't in the same position, if they aren't progressing in their career for whatever reason, then there are also challenges with that. The challenges of sometimes social mobility, challenges around earning differently, how you use your disposable income, sometimes feeling like I'm spending the bulk of my money and they don't, or I'm curtailing what I'm able to do because their income isn't as strong. Plus what happens when people start to buy assets, like all of those other factors start to come in. And for example, for many women who, do particularly well in their careers, they also have the challenge of the biological clock is ticking, right? So we've got to be quite out of the gates, because if you don't get it together by at least 30-ish, and time, things take time. But obviously by 35-ish, women are starting to get concerned. And if you've got won't commit Derek, who's still, staying at his mum's and pops round, won't commit. I say, open your eyes, man. You know what I'm talking about.
I'm thinking, I'm in my mind, I'm picturing Derek's.
Yes.
And I'm picturing the women that you're talking about. I'm thinking about the successful women that have these careers in care industry, social care manager, youth offending team manager, in those industries where, you know, they're getting paid good money and they have this, almost this aspiration about their values, about what they consider a good man is. So, you know, Bob the bus driver, he's able to commit, he's morally grounded, he's got strong principles, but he ain't earning. Do they give Bob the bus driver a look in? Or do they think, actually, I want that particular type of man that is quite affluential, that's got options, that's got choices.
We
and
get
if
that.
so for me, I understand about the system.
That's going to be a question.
Yeah, so for me, I work across the board, and I work with a lot of men. I think one of the things that I've picked up from my work is that there's a lot of hurt men that have gone through a breakup or a relationship where it's almost protected their heart, where they're not cold, but there's a level of, that's not going to happen to me again. I ain't getting mashed up like that again. So I am not investing the whole of myself into this. So that no commitment, Derek, sometimes that's actually traumatized Derek. That's, you know, I haven't done any work on myself to understand why the relationship broke down. I haven't taken any accountability. And you said something earlier, you said narcissism. And it's a buzzword now, because every Tom, Dick and Harry is a narcissist specialist. So relationship, he's a narcissist. So everyone's an expert now.
Oh, and everybody's an empath.
Yeah. And for me, last year, the buzzword was narcissism. For me, the buzzword this year is accountability. Starting to take accountability.
So is that one of the biggest issues that you feel is happening in relationships?
Accountability.
Lack of accountability or taking too much accountability?
I think lack of accountability in understanding themselves. I had a conversation with a colleague today and I said, how can you be truthful to someone in a relationship if you're not even truthful to yourself on who you are? It's almost impossible. If I'm not true to myself, I don't understand my likes, my desires, my wants, my aspirations. I don't understand my own sexuality in terms of what I like. I don't have the confidence in a relationship to actually express these things. Then how can I be true to you if I'm not even true to myself about what I like? So I think for a lot of men, and probably some of the women that I've worked with, accountability, getting to know yourself. That's one of the things that I think is one of the struggles.
I think that's good. Mr. Cozy.
Gosh. So I'm the non-therapist on the couch.
You're still an expert, don't worry.
However, so I think my experience is slightly different because I think the vast majority of people who come to my event are single.
Okay.
And the vast majority of them are open to looking for relationships. So a lot of the conversation is around why is it so hard to enter a relationship. A lot of them have even got to the point where they can talk about Derek not committing after how long because they haven't actually entered or gone past the first date. I think from a lot of the conversations, because it's a light-hearted event, the idea is it's entertainment. You know, it's not a therapy couch. We're here to have fun. A lot of the conversations become fractures because people aren't listening to each other and they aren't hearing each other. And I think what is happening in our community, and social media hasn't helped as well, is that we've almost like normalized this. It's their fault. Black women are this, black men are that.
Yeah.
And this constant back and forth, well, you guys do this, well, you guys do that. And I think as a result, it's almost, and the way I picture it, it's almost like what came first, the chicken or the egg. It's a really fun conversation, but it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's been, you know, Aristotle spoke about it thousands of years ago, and we're still having a conversation, but there's no answer. And I think there's so much in society where we've normalized what is wrong without actually seeking the answer. And I guess through my event, what I want to try and encourage people to do is introspection. It's less about what is wrong with the dating market. It's what have I not healed in myself? What are my traumas? How has my context affected the way that I perceive myself, perceive the opposite sex? What's the work that I need to do? So I think part of it, I'm trying to send them your way in terms of you need to get into the therapy room to have these conversations, because otherwise we're just flinging rocks at each other and ultimately we're just getting hurt as a result.
Yeah.
That's some really interesting points there.
100%. And I think that's some of the things that I see as well is the lack of self-awareness and the lack of willingness sometimes to do the work to heal in a particular area. So say, for example, you could be in a relationship with someone and you realize that they have an addiction. It's the lack of, okay, what am I going to do about this addiction? It's kind of like, this is just a part of who I am. You got to accept me. And it just becomes a norm in the relationship that your partner likes to drink, where it's not a norm to be like, I need to go and get help and do something. So it's knowing that there's certain parts of us and adapting it as a personality trait or just a part of my characteristics, and not actually being like, this is not healthy. My communication style ain't healthy. The way I handle conflict ain't healthy. But what am I doing about it? I think also partly what you said in terms of the listening, some of the things that I've realised, especially doing a little bit of couple work now, is women are talking on this level, men are talking on this level, and we're
missing.
Yeah, like
Missing each other.
we're not even talking the same language.
Yeah.
And I know there was a big thing about this book that came out years ago about men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
That's an old book as well.
Yeah, it's an old book, but
It's
it's
an old book.
but gold. Do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I think with that book, it kind of opened up the conversation to really understand how different we are.
Yeah.
And someone else said on a podcast the other day that for some women, they learn more about men from other women,
Sorry.
not from men.
Yeah.
And then when men are talking to them, sometimes, like I host a conversation like called Cognac and Conversation, and we'll just have questions in a jar and we'll have a few friends over, we'll be having a couple drinks and talking. But in the conversations, and you will see sometimes in the room where women will tell you what you're thinking. You will have a conversation and the men will say this, that and the other, and we'll be like, no. We know. Or what you meant to say is this, or we'll finish your sentences. But the space sometimes to be able to sit back and just listen to each other. So men listening to what the women have to say, understanding it from their point, and vice versa. Sometimes we're just not having the space. It's like a battle rather than a conversation or understanding, or just listening to be heard and not listening to understand. And those are the things that I'm finding quite a lot.
So it's
the room.
about communication difficulty. So one of the biggest hurdles or barriers is the communication. And as you said, because we've got these false narratives now. So when I was thinking about today, I was thinking, okay, we've got people from different generations. So I think we might be a tad older than those two.
I'm grateful for that.
No, age is a good thing, you know.
I have no issue.
Yeah,
My
so
47 years of life.
Yeah, and 50 plus. So like,
Yeah.
I would
We've
say
got a
we're
good
one
range.
generation,
We've got a good
and then these guys, they're like the 30s. So is there a difference in the two? Like, is that generation of the 30, 35s, 40? Are they
Are we
experiencing?
facing the same issues?
Are we facing the same issues? Like for the older black women, you know, like these successful black women that have these really good jobs, and they got their, they got their financial independence. Are they having the same woes that this generation is having in terms of commitment, communication? Because what you were saying is they're not even entering relationships now.
Can't get there yet.
Why do you think that is?
So there's a poem, one of my favorite poems actually, which goes like this. It says, okay, so she had blue skin, and so did he. He kept his hid, and so did she. They searched for blue the whole wide through and walked right past and never knew. And I think that's probably a big contributor to why people are not entering into relationships, because they're hiding. I think we all want the same thing. And I think that's one thing that I realized through the event, that when we're having these conversations, the men are saying we want to be seen, we want to be respected, we want to be acknowledged, we want to be heard. The women are saying exactly the same thing, but like you're saying, we're missing each other. And I think part of that is because we're hiding, we're scared to be honest and say, this is what we're looking for, this is what we actually need. And because of that, we have these masks up that actually, the archetype of the strong black woman or the indifferent black man who doesn't want to commit, when actually everyone is just scared.
Yeah. You know, when you said that, one of the things that came across my mind was around that commitment thing. Like, what does respect look like for a man? And what does being seen look like for a man? And what does it feel like for a woman? Like, do we experience respect in different ways? As a man, What does respect mean for me? As a woman in a relationship, what does respect mean? So like, I'm just thinking, do we see respect and being seen from different spaces? And maybe do we need to explore, actually, this is what respect feels like for a man. This is what being seen looks like for a man.
I guess a lot of the challenges that often show up is about what I see, and this is my bias based on my experience, is the challenge of not wanting to mother a man. I don't want to mother somebody. I have needs, and as the third generation, fourth generation female becomes much more aware and is moving away from roles of servitude, whether it be in her career. You know, many women don't want to just work in helping professions. They may be working in IT, they may be working in banking, and it's kind of an acknowledgement that I don't want to perpetually be pouring out, and I want my cup to be filled. And if for example, your partner isn't conscious of that and may be holding on to more traditional ways of being in relationship, this is also a challenge. Plus, also, we have to look at the Disney effect. You know, many of us were raised on these beautiful programs that conditioned us. We're waiting for the man on the noble steed to come and rescue us. And for many of my clients, one of their biggest challenges is the fantasy in their mind's eye, and I'm unapologetic about having the conversation. Sometimes we need to get creative, we need to draw. Like, what is the fantasy in your mind's eye? Because often the reality is a disconnect from fantasy. And being articulate and knowledgeable about what your fantasy is so essential, because reality will never fit that.
Okay, so when you say these fantasies, you mean like this high aspirational man, like this man that is
Disney,
got the job, tall, dark and handsome, or tall, fair and handsome, drives the car.
Firstly, what do you mean by fair?
Fair in complexion.
You're getting into colorism?
No, we're not talking about colorism, because everyone's got their own type. So
Right.
some people might like someone that has a fairer complexion because that's what they're attracted to. Some people might like someone that's got a darker complexion. So this fantasy in your head,
Whatever that may be.
it may be
Yes.
actually a tall, fair-skinned, masculine man in a high-powered job with a Range Rover or so forth. Or it might be that thuggy type of dark-skinned black man that they think this man's going to take care of me. He's rough and tumble. He's going to sort me out. You know, they have these illusions in their mind. But then do men have these illusions in their mind about what they expect from a woman? Because we've been socialized in a certain way.
Yeah.
If you grew up with your mum, your dad wasn't around, does that inform how you view a woman?
And that touches on what Keeley said, like in the opening line when you spoke about the mothering aspect in relationships. Because just linking on with what you're saying, Scotty, that is something that I've worked and helped couples to navigate, or even like friends and family, for example. So you see, when you introduce someone and they say, oh yeah, I've got 3 kids and the husband, that for me lets me know how they're then viewing, because you're not seeing your partner as a husband, he's one of the kids. And then when it comes to working with relationships now, when they're experiencing intimacy issues and things like that, a lot of women will say, I struggle with finding my husband attractive or wanting to be sexual because he feels like my son.
Wow.
He feels like my son, is that mother aspect. So husband or partner may be saying, oh, you know, we don't have sex enough, blah, blah, blah. Wife is saying, yeah, but you feel like my son because I do everything, or I'm doing too much. And the balance and the dynamic of household chores or responsibilities, or where women are having to work now. So we're working, we're coming home, doing dinner, doing kids. We're still, some houses are still expected to keep up with all these things.
And
then,
shave your legs.
Yeah.
And underarm.
do you know what I mean?
underarm
And then
something
mash
else.
up. And then, you know, roll over, tap, tap. They still want their things. And she's knackered. But then his needs are not being met. Her needs are not being met. And then it's like she's viewing you as you're someone I have to look after. You're someone I have to take care of. So you're my child. So that sexual attraction decreases because you're now my dependent rather than a partner. And I get that a lot in the therapy room.
Okay.
And that, just thinking about it, because you triggered that is something I think that's contributing to a lot of the issues that we're having sometimes in community, where relationships are changing now.
because women are going into careers, women are doing more things outside of the household, and it's bringing about a different way of relationships that may not have been the norm, you know.
But at the
20,
same
30 years ago.
time, there's a biological clock.
Yeah.
And when that becomes a concern, you know, now we're going in the archives, unblocking, and, you know, we are needing to find a suitable candidate for our desire to have children. More and more clients are choosing to freeze their eggs because they haven't met the one.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting phenomena that I'm witnessing more and more and more of. So something is awry. The challenge is we cannot have it all.
Yeah.
And I
Exactly.
think society has done women a great injustice because we want the career, we want the lifestyle. But if you really think about our most fertile years is when we really have to be
On it. The pressure.
on it. And then if you've fallen for
You rolling your eyes.
No, not at all.
No,
no.
I think that is so interesting because
I think-
I'm really glad
what's that?
that it's a woman sitting in that chair
Saying
saying
that.
that.
It's the truth.
I'm really glad because
the
if I
truth.
was to say that, because the reality is,
Listen, when the
Yeah.
For a
biological
man-
clock
Different.
ticks in her, listen,
it's,
it gets
it's
serious
a
for
wrap.
the ladies.
It's a wrap. When you get to
Yeah.
35, 40, it's coming up to a wrap.
Yeah.
No. Once you start hitting the 30 trees and you realize this brother is not stepping up,
Or there is no brother,
Yeah.
as you're saying.
exactly,
Hit the date yet. Yeah.
right? It's a
Panic.
concern, the womb.
Yeah.
The
So
womb.
on the flip side of that
That's
now,
serious.
a man becomes more valuable as he becomes older. He becomes more emotionally attuned to himself.
He does?
100%.
What makes you make that assumption?
I'm talking about the men that I'm around
Right.
and the men that I speak to.
Where?
There's a lot of men. Go right, let's think about it. Where
No,
we
that's
come
funny.
from. So I come from a place in northwest London. It's probably the same in south, in east. Where you see guys 40, 45, and they're still rocking, you know, 2 trousers.
Nonsense.
I call those.
Stuck in
I
the
just call
80s.
those adult males. So you know, like in
They're stuck in sixth form.
yeah, they're males, they're adult males, but they're not men.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, when a man becomes attuned to himself, as he gets older, he becomes more valuable. And this is the reality. A man can press the reset button in his 50s.
Yeah.
In his 60s, he can press the reset. He can start again. Because if I make myself highly attainable, i.e. my game is up.
If you do, do you mean you can you can have children? Do you mean that you can make yourself desirable so that a woman, because you can, you know, you can
100%.
produce
I can
up
press the
until-
reset button.
So you call it the reset button?
100%. I can press
Okay.
the reset button and
And
start
I see
again.
it. I see it often, and I think this is one of, possibly, Keeley could correct me if I'm wrong, one of the reasons why certain women may stay in relationships or hold on to these men because of that clock that that's ticking. It's that actually,
I've put in 5.
yeah, I've put
Yeah.
in 5 years. Someone else said this actually. They said that most women will say, if a relationship's coming to an end, they will say, like, I can't leave because I've already put in 5 years.
Yeah.
If it was the other way around, you don't really hear men saying, oh, I've got to stay because I've put 5 years into this. It just...
And I think we also have to be very mindful. As I said to a young client I'm working with who is seeking love and online, not really looking loving online, which she was actually born in the 90s. She's like, because then it feels like that you know, house party era would be where people kind of communicate. And it is ironic, you know, you can be out and people are on their devices. Human to human conversation doesn't happen, but people are more than happy to be on their devices communicating with God knows who. And I don't know, but if we're talking about being in black communities, and if I choose to go to a discotheque, a dance,
A blues dance.
let's be frank, it is disproportionately dominated by females.
Yeah.
Statistically, how are you going to stand out from the crowd? Because even the man who's a 0 out of 10 feels cocky. Because he know there's high demand,
Yeah.
low supply.
Yeah.
Brother, you still a 1. Keep it moving.
Keep it moving.
So for the ladies, Like when the competition is so fierce and you are outnumbered, statistically, it is very difficult. And we know from, I feel like I'm showing off, but I can't even remember, anthropology, right? I did that course at uni. It was a struggle. I failed it and I had to retake it. But I remember this one piece of research that said in societies where there are disproportionate amount of women and not a lot of men, that the men could, they have much more choice.
Of course
So
they
they're
do.
not invested in the relationships in the same way. And when you reverse that statistic, in societies where there's low women, high men, the men are often much more committed. So, statistically, I think one of the things about psychology is we often look at, kind of traditional psychology. The aspect of psychology that fascinates me is evolutionary psychology, which gets back down to our basic biology. This is why I love to talk about the womb. I love to talk about our biological clocks, because these are, no matter what, these are fundamental factors. And yes, a man who gets older could become desirable. However, bro, if you're not going to the doctors and checking out yourself and you're not looking out after yourself, I do not want to be a nurse, a carer for you. So as you may mature, you may look good and so on and so forth. We also have to scrutinize how you live, how you look after yourself, because many men aren't doing that. And so as we become more conscious and aware, I may well want to be living my best life and choosing to, use my credit card to fly on, collect my Amex points and go on a first class trip, because who wants to be at home nursing somebody?
Yeah.
I ain't lying.
And this is what I meant about when you become a man of substance in yourself, you don't look for a woman to mother you. Because you actually, being a man is that actually I take accountability for who I am. So I take accountability for my health. And that means my diet, my gym routine, my skin routine. I take care of my mental well-being in terms of I've got my therapist on speed dial. So I've got some guys, some of my clients, I don't see them every week. I don't see them every month. But they might hit a brick wall. And trust me, Scotty, I need a session with you. And they're not ramping to pay their 45, 50 quid. Because they know I can go out on a Saturday and I can go to the rave and I can buy a bottle of Hennessy for £200. And the problem is going to be still there when I finish that bottle. But when I speak to Scotty, I've had a chance to slow down, to process, to reflect, and to think. And then I can make some choices about the decisions that I need to make. So it's about communication, because when I'm thinking about the subject of relationships, as you said, we're missing. The communication isn't there.
So I think, I've been listening to the therapist speak, and I think there's so many different interesting viewpoints. I think what I hear, if I'm thinking on behalf of the men at my event, because like I said, it's disproportionate. I think it's probably about 80% women. So Mandem, if you want to come.
That's a shout out. Big up the thing again. Tell them the thing again.
Yeah.
Tell them the thing
It is
again.
about 80% women who.
You should have it in the barbershop.
Yeah. Potentially. And to be fair, we do have those conversations, and I think actually the interesting thing that I find when we have these conversations, what I really want to cultivate is empathy for each other and understanding where each other are coming from, because ultimately we are different. Like you said, women are from Venus, men are from Mars. That's not going to change, but we need each other. I think one of the concerns that the men have is, I think what we're seeing is the consequences of the dehumanization of men, in the sense that men for however many thousands of years have been measured by their ability to provide. And because that has been disproportionately in their favor, there's been no contest. The man is the man of the house. He's given all the rights. He has all the power. He has the voting ability, all of that kind of stuff. Now things have become a bit more egalitarian, which is fine and is good. That element of authority and power isn't there the same way it used to be. And it seems that with the diminishing of that power is the diminishing of the respect. So Bob, the bus driver, doesn't get a look in because you can't provide. And this other guy does get a look in because he can. And I think all of that is all well and good, but it puts men in a position where they are seen as utilities. You are here to meet an end rather than you being the end. So therefore, when it comes to us discussing certain clips, there might be a clip where a man is verbally abusive to a woman, and that man is lambasted, you're a waste man, you're this, you're despicable. The minute it's reversed, we hear, and it happens every single event, I'm never surprised, it's the yeah, but she's tired. Yeah, but he's not living up to his expectations. Yeah, but he's been told. Yeah, but then the last event, the big thing that the ladies were saying, and it's on the Instagram page, he was warned. He was warned. Leave me alone. The woman warned him, leave me alone. They had an argument. He wanted to try and resolve it. She said, leave me alone. He didn't listen. And she basically said, you're this, your penis is small, I have no respect for you, and that's why I'm cheating on you. And there was very few people saying actually what she said was categorically wrong. When the tables were reversed, everyone was saying, well, no, she was justified because of X, Y, Z. So I think a lot of the pain I think that men are experiencing is, if I'm not a high earner, do I deserve love?
Oh.
And if I don't deserve love, what does that say about me as a person, as an individual, as a human being? So I think through my event, the main aim is to try and build empathy for both sides. But equally, it becomes more and more apparent there isn't much empathy for men as people, rather than people who are meant to provide or protect or whatever the words are these days. I don't know.
That's a big subject. That's a big conversation.
I guess the challenge though is with, as you said, there's a lack of empathy, and the challenge is around vulnerability. That if I'm endeavoring to converse with you, to communicate, and then I'm stonewalled, I hit your defense, there's a brick wall, then where do we go if there's nowhere to go?
Yeah.
You see, and so there's the capacity to offer grace, and that's something I have to be really mindful of as a therapist who dates. I have encounters, experiences, I call them now, and that as you know, someone who's in this field, you know, I'm going to come with a disproportionate awareness, which is unfair and often at times unhelpful. And you know, when I hit a defense, I endeavor to give grace and to be conscious of, you know, someone else's stance. But I also have to be careful not to dishonor myself as I tread lightly. And, you know, and then it's really easy to say, oh, men aren't doing the work on themselves. And that's true. But I'm not too sure what is the way forward when so many of us, we've been reading the Jan Levan Sant, going to therapy, doing self-help, journaling, 28-day challenges and so on. And when you then, you know, want to build a family, grow together, and then you hit, defense is always, for me, anytime defense come up, behind that is the vulnerability.
For sure.
And obviously, you know, it's understandable, something's been triggered. But then what?
What do you think those vulnerabilities are?
I would say so I think the difficulty, especially regarding men and vulnerability, and in relation to the lack of men going to therapy, is because a lot of those self-defense mechanisms are there for survival. They're not irrational. And in speaking, you know, from personal experience and the men who come to my event, you know, a lot of the defense mechanisms that men have is because when you were vulnerable, it didn't go very well. And hence the reason why, speaking about empathy, I think the narratives are important. You know, when we talk about protector, provider, you know, men are acutely aware of our deficiencies, our weaknesses, and our insecurities, and our shortcomings. And when there's an expectation that men can't meet, we have two options. We can either suffer under the weight of that expectation and acknowledge that we can't meet it, or we can pretend that we can. We can't do both. And especially if the expectation is unfair. You know, I will still contend that a man's ability to provide is, you know, financial provision is probably 5% of that provision. There are so many more. And I think because the narrative is, if you're not up here, then that means you're not able to provide, then a man is not going to be able to be vulnerable and say, actually, well, I'm struggling with X, Y, Z, because you've already made me into something that can't meet your need. And I think that's a big challenge. So I think the narrative on both sides needs to change. You know, I think if I said here that, you know, the issue with relationship is black women, we probably go viral because that's what people want to hear. You see what, but it's not helpful. It's not helpful to either of us.
One of the issues that I do think, or that I've seen that women can struggle with often is the emotional receivability. And I've seen that on a podcast as well. And I thought, actually, yeah, that is what I'm seeing. So where you said, okay, men will have a time where they open up and they may share a little thing or just dangle a little bit just to see how it would be taken. And a lot of the men that I speak to often say, okay, cool, I've shared this, that and the other. But then it turns into, I've got to console them because they're now upset about what I've said that's made them feel a certain way. So now they've not been able to hold space for what I've given them. I'm now having to turn it and console them because they're upset about something that I've shared with them. So the ability to kind of be the safe space or to hold a vulnerable moment or allow a man to be vulnerable. I've been shocked at some conversations, and maybe it's the women that are not as matured, where it's like, okay, yeah, no, if a man cries, he's just a
We're not
a waste
going
man.
to use the word.
We're
We're
not-
not going to use
You
them
see, I
bad
got
language.
that
there,
there.
Well, I think
Do you know
it's
what I mean? And
actually-
it's shocking.
But I think it's just an important word to use. That for a man to feel like he's a pussy is a big deal. Brené Brown writes about that in Daring Greatly. Like, the worst thing, she talks really beautifully about vulnerability. The worst thing for a man is to feel like you think he's a pussy.
Yeah.
Because it annihilates his masculinity. And I think it's important because it's important to carry as an awareness. And if anyone tramples over that and takes advantage of that, can we complain when the individual rescinds and pulls away and is not available?
Yeah, because that comes back to the question that I asked. What does respect look like for a woman? What does it look like for a man? And that word that you use. If any man feels that a woman's going to pee him off and I see him as that, I'm not going to commit to you. I'm not going to be loyal to you. I'm not,
But also
because you
what
don't
happens-
respect me.
but
So
what-
I've, as you said earlier, the ball's in my court. Because I can go to the rave next week and hear what now? There's 30 of them to one of me. So I can pick and choose. So I don't, yeah, you might pussy me off today. But tomorrow, I go rave and that and I'm good. I'll just self-soothe with the next conquest.
And I think the sad reality is the way we deal with the trauma that we cause each other doesn't benefit any of us anyway. We don't win. And I think that's ultimately, part of the event is I want us to win. And I say at the end of every event, it's our children who are suffering when we get it wrong. While we're playing games on Tinder and Hinge and at a discotheque and all that kind of stuff, it's our children who bear the brunt of our failings when it comes to relationships. So I think...
But that's individualizing something that is actually political, social, like we live in capitalist societies, right? We know it's beneficial for us to be in single households because we're all paying council tax, we're all buying a washing machine. And I think when we just bubble it down to the individual, like I came across pictures of marriages from Windrush generation somewhere on my TikTok yesterday, and how interesting, right? Remember growing up in Harlesden, you'd see weddings, you'd see them church bells ringing
christening.
on a Sunday. You see me? Like, that's just stopped. Like, the last wedding I remember was when people was trying to get their stay back in the 90s to get a little visa. You see me? Like, it stopped. People, it's true, Scotty.
I think
The game's changed.
It's changed, and like what you said, there's an element around capitalism, around if we produce enough households, then we produce enough tax. So yes, let's break up the family. Let's give this independence.
I'm from St. Raph's Estate. I ain't ashamed of saying it, right?
Of course.
And I'm not advocating women stayed in abusive relationships.
No.
But we all know financially it's better to have him out the yard. You get your little single person discount. You don't have to pay the same council tax. As I've been socially mobile, I see so much of the people I grew up with, where I worked in IKEA for 10 years, who have that mindset or wanted to get their council yard mindset, and that being in a partnership is a hindrance. So that then manifests over the years, which then results in, disproportionate single parenthood. We also have to think about what I saw as someone who worked in prisons is emotional incest, with mothers who go above and beyond for their sons. There's no tough love. It is emotional incest, and people, we need to be talking about that, because when he was outside with the TT Audi and he ain't got no job and he's taking you Asda and you can get what you want, you weren't challenging the conversation. But when police come kick off your door and find a strap in your yard, now the whole house gets arrested. We need to have the conversation.
That is a conversation and a half about that's because we're going to be doing later on, we're going to be doing some stuff around parenting. I've got two guests. I've got a head teacher and I've got a next man that's in the education, and we're going to be talking about those types. What's the presentations in schools for those young men?
What I'm talking about is women who haven't had access to men.
Yeah.
Through their own abandonment, who haven't had fatherless daddies, fatherless daughters. There you go. Right. Yeah. So then we haven't had a blueprint for men. Yeah. So then what happens when you have a son?
Yeah, not only when you have a son, what happens when you find a man, because you don't even know what a man is, because you ain't had a man in your life. So when a man's trying to communicate with you about, these are my wants, my desires, my needs, because you're not listening and you're not hearing, because how it might be expressed to you, you're thinking, he's chatting feisty to me. But he's not. He's just communicating with you, but you're not used to having that level of communication.
Well, I think that's also why I think your roles are so important, because I think the context that we are in is so anti everything, anti peace, anti happiness, anti prosperity, anti family, anti-community, anti-black. It's all of those things. And I think there is, I think we need to acknowledge that. I think that's important. We can't be naive to say that the game is fair. The game is rigged. And we know it, but equally we do have agency and choice. And a lot of us are making dumb choices. And we can blame it based on... dumb in terms of counterproductive in light of better knowledge and better choices. So, for example, I think this is also important in terms of the accountability buzzword that we're talking about. As much as we can say that the man who is not working, doesn't want to work, the 40-year-old outside William Hill, for example, has made choices that are not ideal. The woman who chooses to partner with him has made a choice.
Yes.
And the choice might be what she thought was best at the time, but ultimately it's not conducive to her or to him or to their children.
What isn't?
The partnership.
You know,
what makes you say that?
It's not. I'm going to interject.
But maybe it is from an evolutionary perspective. What happens if he has the wicked Islam? What happens if she's stigmatized?
So what? Let
me tell you something.
Some of
them problematic men got the best sex in her.
But then I think then what we can't do is complain about the consequences of it.
Yes.
That's you can make whatever choices you want.
She has but it depends on her level of awareness, because there's value in blaming and not taking responsibility. Because remember, a lot of women thought the pum power would make a bad man good. We saw the potential. And this is why I tell the ladies, be careful of your la-la land. Be careful of your fantasy. Because you thought if you put on the Vicky's Secrets, the red bottoms, the little tassels on the nipples, did your little Ann Summers ting-a-ling-a-ling, you could revolutionize him. And it didn't happen. And then you ended up with a liability on your own.
But I think, but equally, it doesn't have... I've spoken to Shazara about it before, and I think it's important to say that, and this is slightly digressing, but, sex is not a compliment in terms of a man wanting to have sex with a woman. It's not a compliment. And I think that's very important. It's not. And for many women it is. He wants to lie down with me. It's not a compliment. Compliments are, let's partner together. Let me listen to you. All of that kind of stuff. And I think...
But you're coming from a very rational perspective.
I think we have to be, because clearly it's not worked any other way.
But I think, is it not better to meet people, for some women who have internalized that they're not attractive, they don't fulfill what they've been conditioned to believe are ideals of beauty. The fact that this person finds me desirable in and of itself can stimulate something within them.
Of course.
So then that goes back to accountability, because until we start being accountable for our growth and our healing, because something that we've shared on this show already, we're all messed up. We've all got our own stuff. Yeah? And part of becoming whole is acknowledging your stuff acknowledging actually what is it about me and this attractiveness? Why do that? It's come from somewhere. Actually doing that work, and I get it. One of the things that we kind of highlight on this show is around the importance of therapy, the importance of investing in yourself, the importance of actually, can I spend £50 a month to get an hour space to help me think about my stuff? Yeah. Or do I do the usual? Every weekend I go to, back in my day we used to call it the gambling house, now they call it the bookie. Or do I go to the races? Do I go to the rave? Or do I go to the cannabis pipe or the crack pipe? Do I escape from that accountability and just live in what you call this fantasy? So when I think about relationships and the struggles, there is struggles, but there is also some really powerful relationships that I've seen, where I've seen couples that have a strong union. And one of the things that you mentioned earlier is when we was growing up, you used to see weddings, you used to see christening, and you used to have family members where that's Miss Brown daughter, that's Miss John's son. There was a connection. And then I thought about, when he was talking, spirituality. So when I'm thinking about relationships now, how I thought about relationships 20 years ago is completely different to how I think about relationships now.
What's been the change in your mindset?
There has to be a commonality that we share. And for me, when you have spirituality, religion, faith, you understand that actually there is something that binds us together. So when I think about, I don't have no data, I don't have the stats, but as you said, I don't know what the marriage data is like now, but I don't think it is as healthy as it was 10 years ago. I don't know what the divorce rate is now, but I'm making a wild assumption it's probably a much higher than what it was, because now it's around throwaway society. It's around throw. It's not about building. And what spirituality has taught me, and what I'm learning through my own personal journey with my faith, is the importance of having Father God in your relationship. So like I see shows on telly and some of the things that they say, I want someone that has faith or has belief, because for that person it gives them an understanding we will share a commonality that will bind us. So everyone's different. Some people don't believe in faith, some people don't have faith, but my own personal journey has made me understand that faith and belief is an important part. So when I think about relationships, our conversation today has been kind of heavy, because it's been like, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be worked on, but there's also a lot of beautiful relationships that I've seen with my own eyes. Absolutely. Where young couples, 25, they understand the narrative, they understand, but I'm not paying 2 different council tax bill. I'm not buying 2 different washing machines. We're gonna have a union where we're going to work together. I'm seeing it now. So, but it's not the norm. You're not getting it on the Insta. You're not getting it on the TikTok.
It won't trend.
It don't sell. What sells is this. Let's get 4 guys to sit on a couch
and cuss out black women.
Let's get 4 women to sit on a couch and cuss out black men. And then that narrative now becomes the narrative that is sold. The reason why we're doing this stuff here is we want to spill a different narrative. The reason why you're doing, I want to get more in depth to it. So the aim of the therapy spot is to raise awareness. Yes, there is a lot of challenges in our community for our age as well, and 40, 45 plus, for this generation, 30, 35s. But there is some things that we can do. Let's not buy into the false narrative. Let's work on ourselves. Let's understand ourselves. Let's understand that through healing, we become whole. And when we become whole, two people can make it together and relationships work. But the thing that we need to do is start to be accountable for our own stuff. I'm tired of...
Should. Did you say should?
I think we
see-
we should, and we can try. We
Well-
can inform people.
Well-
Can we start being accountable for our own stuff?
No.
When that woman broke
know
my
why?
heart
You know why?
20 years ago,
You know why?
go on, come, hit me.
Because we have a particular bias, right? And what is absolutely essential, I am all up for non-growth. I am all up for stagnation and stuckness. Because not everybody's going to change. Some people will blame and take no responsibility for
100%.
themselves. And they will always find a scapegoat. Yeah, and I have the utmost respect for that. Those people, me and them, we don't gel so well. We don't go together so well. But I have the utmost respect for it. Because, you know, we can be of the bias that this is the way for everybody, because naturally we've benefited from it. And let's be frank, this is often, for majority of us, how we've trained, this is Eurocentric psychology. And I think it's of fundamental importance to be articulate to people about the bias from a white European perspective. For example, I'm very much passionate to talk about collective societies. We culture, a lot of my Asian clients, where, you know, they're second, third generation, they come from a we culture. There is no I in we. You start talking in I and want to do what's right for you, it could be curtains for you. That could leave you in a very vulnerable position. There is no I. People who come from we cultures, it is about the group, it's about the brand.
Okay.
Right.
This is why spirituality is important to me, because when you are spiritually based, it's a we. We are Christians.
We must also,
we are practicing faith.
Yes.
When it's the I, it's about the individual.
But
it's
I think
about
what I'm talking about is this is only one way. Other cultures don't do therapy. They don't sit and navel gaze. And I think that's a big challenge for us. That I can end up navel gazing, reflecting and being in my head. Like sometimes get up,
Do something.
get out, do something.
Yeah.
Yes, conscience. Get up and do something. Get out there.
Yeah.
Roller skate. Get out of your head. Get into your body. Maybe like it's, you know,
That's good.
church, whatever it is.
Go to the gym.
There is value in community.
Yeah.
And that is what we've lost. Because in community, if we pull our resources, as our parents did, look at that church in Harlesden,
Which one?
the one where Errol used to preach by
Tavistock.
Beach, down by Palm Beach. Yeah. Remember Palm
Oh,
Beach?
the one on the corner on the scrubs.
Our parents pulled, our forefathers pulled together to buy these churches. We don't pool again together.
Yeah.
We don't
but
pool
this
together.
is you see this subject now around black. This is a totally different subject, because now we're kind of moving into the realm of institutionalized systemic racism. What is it about trying? We can look, we can steer, but you know, in America they had redlining. In the UK they had certain things where we just wasn't viable. So when you talk about economics and pooling, to pool you need something to pool to. And if there's nothing that you don't have, I look at it like this. I go home and I make a pot of rice. There's no more rice. I cook all the rice. But everybody in the family now just come and take out the rice. Pot I got done. And there's no replenishing. So there's got to be some replenishing of the rice, and that means pooling together, because everyone now knows the rice in the pot's running low, you know. We have to pool together to buy some more rice. So if we don't understand that the pot is running low, how can we pool together? Because there is no me get my belly full of rice, I is okay. Not actually, are we okay?
But there'll always be those people.
Yeah.
We won't get utopia. Inherent selfishness is a part of the human condition.
So is this why the relationships, but when we come back to the subject, is this why relationships now in our communities are fraught with so many difficulties? Because inherently, is it because, as you said, it's all about
Me,
I,
absolutely.
me. And actually, do I need to now start being more empathic, more understanding, more curious
Yeah.
about actually what's going on for my sisters. Those sisters that you talked about that have had this raft of narcissistic men where, you know, they got this image of Mr. You know, some of the way how you describe it today, I'm going to leave here. And I've got these images in my head now of these fantasy men that these women have drawn in their minds. Are they real? Are these fantasy men real?
Sometimes, but with final thoughts.
Okay.
With final thoughts, I want to end on some kind of hope and encouragement for those that are struggling, because the reality is, like with what you said, almost 80% of the people that come to your events are single women. And with what the points that you brought out about the biological clock ticking, this relationship thing is quite a big issue in our community. It is causing a lot of anxiety for both parties in all generations, that everyone wants to do relationships, wants to be in relationships, or some women now are even choosing to be single because they just can't be bothered, they're tired, they're exhausted. There's all kinds of things, but it is the topic. So from these discussions today, what would our encouragement be? Or what are the things that we think is needed to help heal this issue with relationship breakdowns? Final thoughts.
I'm a massive advocate of getting out there. As I say to people, you know, I mean, look, people are dating online, cool. But what else can you do? Like, do a course, do something, a short-based course, get out there, do something, meet people. Mm-hmm. Try to cast your net wider. But as I said to my young client recently, you know, also try to put yourself in environments where you might be a bit of an anomaly. Mm-hmm. You know, like if we're going to parties and it's female dominated, like what might you want to do, think about doing that is a little bit different. So it is about taking responsibility for oneself and also trying to do things differently, to meet in the flesh, to get out. Mm-hmm. And to be brave and to risk when everybody is attached to this, to speak to somebody, to say hello, is actually to be vulnerable nowadays. And as I said to the client before she left, so she looked at me, I said, when you go out this weekend, why don't you compliment a brother if you think he looks handsome? Compliment him. And I said, you know what, when you compliment a man, you know, they crumble.
They crumble?
They crumble.
Like
they're not
crackers.
used to it.
Okay.
They're not used to it. They're not used to it.
No, that's told. No, it's true. It's true.
Men crumble when you compliment them.
Yeah.
And it's not to say, I'm not saying, no, you're not doing it so that then you chirp him, but that you make an observation, just as you might like to be complimented. Yeah. And men are sometimes not too sure nowadays. Like, do I say, is that allowed? Is it this? Is it that?
Am I toxic?
It's not worth the case. It's not worth the case.
You see what I'm saying?
It's not worth the case.
So that would be my thoughts, is also to do something a little bit different and be brave.
Thank you.
Like going to a live show where we discuss black hips, maybe something like that. maybe.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Definitely. I think that's a really powerful way and a medium to get people out, is to do something different. Because what's my final thought around what I would just say, just raise your understanding of others. Try and be a little bit more curious about other people, about what could be going on for them, who they are and what they're about, and just be a little less judgmental. And also expose yourself to different things. Like, there's no point in going to the same rave for the next 10 years. Okay, it's just the same man, them in there. Do something. Go to a debate movie night. Go to, you know, a different environment. Like, if there's 80% of women in the raves, you know, well, you know, men do clay pigeon shooting. Maybe on a weekend go clay pigeon, do something else.
Okay. Thank you.
If he's clay pigeon shooting, I'm a little bit worried. You know, with a shooter. But
A plastic.
We're protectors. We're protectors. That's
Cozy.
right.
You're protectors. Filling the role.
Shotgun, there we go.
As we wrap up, can you give us your closing thoughts, and can you tell us where we can find you and your next event? Because I think that would be a great place to encourage a little bit more men
see what I mean?
to come as well. And it's not a feminine event. It is not a feminine event. The men on the panel.
I'm going to the next one.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's amazing.
Gosh, final thoughts. I think the thing that I kind of got from the conversation is that it's chaotic out there from
Oh
what I
my
hear.
God.
People are suffering, and
Yeah.
you know, you guys are gonna have a lot of work coming your way. But there is hope. I think that's important to kind of articulate. There is hope. We do want the same thing, and it is out there. Like you said, there are couples who are making it work, and I think part of hope is also recognizing, you know, looking for the light is recognizing the darkness, and that's partly acknowledging that the things that we have chosen haven't provided us what we've wanted. Let's see it that way. So there's no blame, but for a lot of people, the choices that we've made have not given us the outcomes that we were looking for. But in acknowledging that, we can then learn to make different choices where we can make those outcomes, and more importantly, teach the next generation to do it better, and build more of that we culture that will effectively just bring happiness and peace and safety. So I would encourage people to get out there, come to my event, come to my live show.
Where can we find you on
So
social?
we are on we are on Instagram. So it's called Cozy Chats, but it's spelled COSEE_chats. You can check us out there. Our next event is on the 11th of July. I won't release the film that we're discussing yet, but it's definitely going to be an interesting one.
So we'll put your handles when we start doing the material.
Keeley, do you want to advertise your handle or where people
Absolutely.
can find you?
Absolutely. Just a quick one.
Yeah.
How do you decide on what film?
That is a very good question. Sometimes, so a lot of the films are based on the classics. So The Best Man, Poetic Justice, like I said, Two Can Play That Game, all of the classic films. Sometimes it's based on things that are happening in culture as well. So there might be something that is trending, it might be a modern film. But a lot of it is based on the themes, it's the ideas that the films explore that I think might be helpful for us to discuss.
Okay. My handle is keyforchange.com. You can get me on YouTube, Instagram, all the socials. But Key for Change, you can use the number 4 or FOR. We bought both domains.
Love that for you.
Got it.
Love that for you.
FOUR. That's why, you know,
We got both.
that's why
Yes, sir.
when I met you, I knew that you was going places because you're thinking about.
I love
Yeah,
that.
and as a therapist, as someone that's from my manor, I've got a lot of respect for you because you've done the graft and you've kind of highlighted that it don't matter if we come from Stonebridge, St. Ralph's, South, East, wherever. We can all do it. We can all aspire and get to that destination if we do the graft, if we do the work, if we make the commitment. And like, you know, we can all turn our hands to whatever we choose to in life as long as we're willing to put in that graft. So lots of respect for you.
And I'm mindful we're closing. I think what has been of fundamental importance, and as a therapist, I don't think we talk sufficiently about it, is faith. Faith, you know, we walk by sight. We walk by faith, not by sight. And I think, you know, if we don't have that faith bone I've developed over many, many years of desperation, of, is this it? Like why me? Why isn't it not happening? And I think we don't sufficiently talk about the power of faith and how that in itself will, to my mind, to my bias, lead to spirituality. Yeah,
Okay.
because it's not based on what you can see.
I have so valued
Yeah.
the conversation today and the different layers. There are just so many angles that we could have taken this conversation in regards to what the challenges that we're facing as a community when it comes to love and relationships, but even just kind of scraping the tip of the iceberg, I don't even know if I said that right. It just opened up so many things to think about, and I think it's important that we continue to have these healthy conversations
100%.
where we're listening to each other. You're speaking things and you're speaking things, and I'm sitting there thinking, okay, do you know what? I didn't think about it like this. I didn't even consider this. Do you know what? Let me go away and reflect. So I think it's really important, and we want to encourage you in your families, with your friends in your circles, to have these conversations, learn from each other, grow, listen more than you speak sometimes. Sometimes it's not always about your opinion. Sometimes it's just about hearing where people are at and thinking, okay, cool, this either needs to be a prayer point or this needs to be a discussion or something. But these conversations need to be had so that we can grow as a people, so that we can develop, we can build strong families and build strong relationships and get that marriage rate back up.
Get that marriage
If
rate
that's
up.
what people desire.
Yeah.
Amen.
And I'm going to say thank you to both of the guests today. And we're going to be doing the next segment, and we'll probably have a discussion out of this. Do we just want to cut back in the chair? And I call it chop it up. But again, I feel really privileged that we're able to bring people that are grounded, that are real, that are genuine, that haven't lost who they are, to a space where we can have thoughtful, curious, non-judgmental conversations to elicit thinking. So for the listeners out there, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing. So hit that button when you see us on the YouTube channel. And if you want to hit up Keeley,
Mr. Cozy.
Mr. Cozy, the handles will be in there. So from us at the Therapy Spot, we're going to say farewell and goodbye.
Thank
Peace.
you.
Welcome to the Therapy Spot, the podcast where real conversations meet real impact. Hosted by Scott and Shazara Melody, two therapists bringing heartfelt, relatable, and therapeutic discussions that touch our lives and uplift our community. We're proud to be sponsored by an incredible network of organizations that share our mission to empower and inspire. Mr. Sophisticated, a business entrepreneur. Raymond from Fifth Avenue, the host of the Breakfast Blues Show. Carson Gracie Warriors, a renowned MMA school in Brent. And VIP, Violence Intervention Project, transforming lives and building safer communities in Hammersmith. Together with our sponsors, we're creating a space where every conversation sparks change, every voice is heard, and every episode inspires growth. Lock in as we feel, heal, and grow together. The Therapy Spot, healing our community one episode at a time.